This is Yoshinobu Yamamoto. From judo workouts and back bridges to handstands and not lifting weights, this man has one of the craziest routines I've ever seen. So I'm curious, what would happen if I trained like Yamamoto? What exactly does he do? And is it effective for pitchers like us to increase pitching velocity? To find out, I'm going through his whole routine that I read about in his secret Japanese book. I'm going to explain what was in the book and why he does each exercise. Yoshinobu Yamamoto's workout is comprised of the 5 B's, and there's also some extra stuff that he does that we'll cover at the very end. But he likes to start off his workouts with breath. So why breath is so important and why Yamamoto places an importance on this, right, is because the breath controls everything. The breath controls when you relax, when you brace, and science has even shown that if you're able to better control your breath, it leads to increases in performance. Now, Yoshinobu Yamamoto trains this through straw breathing. And so this was the first exercise that we tried.
We've got the breath exercise. So we've got straws right here in our mouths. And the point of this, what's the point of it?
Teach you how to relax. Breathing.
Yeah, because like with the straw, you have to relax when you exhale. Yeah, control your breath. So we're gonna do this for about 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, and yeah, let's go.
So as you can see in this first video, what we're doing here is just a simple seated breath. So what we're doing is inhaling through our nose and exhaling through the mouth. Okay, when we're exhaling, we're not allowed to use our nose. And so all the air has to come in through our nose, through the inhale, and then all of the exhale has to go out through the mouth. Now, what this does is that it slows down your exhale, and because the straw makes it really hard for the air to leave your body, right? And so you have to breathe out slowly. And what the slow exhale does is it tells your central nervous system to calm down and relax. And this is so huge for a throw so that we don't tense up. Now we progress this into a slow jog while using the straw breathing. And now this was extremely tough.
All right, next one we've got is a short jog. So same type of concept, but now we're actually doing a jog. So we'll see if this is hard or not. All right, you ready?
Yep.
Ready, set, go. Oh my gosh, that's actually tough.
That was hard.
We're going so slow as well. All right, dang. Yeah, that was so tough. All right, here we go. Let's let this. All right. Oh my gosh. Dang, is that tough for you as well? I'm like running out of breath halfway through.
Now the next B of Yoshinobu Yamamoto's workout is board. Now the primary use of board is to learn full body awareness and balance. When I was reading through Yoshinobu Yamamoto's book, a huge emphasis of his was balance and learning where his center of mass is, right? And also full body awareness. So really understanding where all of his weight is, okay? Now when you have the board, right, you're on something and you really have to be aware of where your center of mass is, especially when you close your eyes. And so we gave it a go. Here's how it went. Okay, so as you can see, we have a small board, and even Yamamoto uses a very small board. And so this doesn't have to be, something that's huge. But what we're basically doing is walking back and forth on this board. And with your eyes open, it's not that difficult. Okay, you're just going back and forth and really feeling where your center of mass is. You really want to feel that. So as soon as you take a step, you want to feel your weight go onto the foot. And when you take a step back, you want to feel that weight onto the next foot as well. Now, where it got a little bit challenging was when we closed our eyes and tried to do this. Now, this was primarily like a balance thing and a full body awareness thing where we are trying to do the same thing. We're in an unstable position and we don't have our eyes open. And so this was something that I was training balance and full body awareness and was actually quite tough. Now, the last exercise that we did is more of a positional exercise, and I wasn't too sure what Yamamoto was working on with this, but this was one of the exercises that we saw, so we gave it a shot. When I look at Yoshinobu Yamamoto's delivery, especially with his drift, he is so good at knowing where his center of mass is and controlling his center of mass, right? And is so aware of his whole body that is able to pull off such an aggressive drift, right? He's able to create so much linear momentum toward the target because he's so good at knowing where his body is in space. So board is one of the ways he trains full body awareness and balance. The third B in Yoshinobu Yamamoto's workout routine was bar. Here's the type of exercises that he does. Now for bar, these exercises were quite funny and they look extremely underwhelming, but they were quite challenging. And it might even just look like we're shaking our booty, but what we're actually trying to do is mobilize our ribs and our pelvis, okay? So what we're trying to do is create movement just from the pelvis rather than overcompensating and using any other muscle or muscle group, right? And so if we're better able to segment the pelvis and the rib cage, then that's only gonna help us in the pitching delivery. And so this is one of the exercises that I think I'll keep incorporating into my exercise routine because it was actually very challenging. And I did feel a lot looser after doing these exercises. Now the fourth B of Yamamoto's is bowl. Now this one was a little bit difficult because with bowl, again, very similar to the board, right? He uses this for balance and full body awareness. You're basically sitting on something that's unstable and you're going through various movements in order to gain full body awareness, right? So you'll see a common theme throughout some of these things is instead of Yamamoto focusing on, the traditional, oh, get strong, get powerful, he likes to think more about balance and the knowledge of his full body awareness, right? And also knowing where his center of mass is, right? Just being extremely coordinated. Because the central theme here is move your body well. That's what his biggest thing is. He wants to be able to move his body extremely efficiently rather than just brute force velocity, okay? And I'll explain why he doesn't lift weights and why he thinks about it in the extra right after this. So that is the central theme here. And for bowl, this was what he was doing. We didn't spend too much time here because we didn't have the proper equipment. With Yamamoto, when he does it, he uses a smaller bowl, right? Which is gonna be a lot easier to get some movement out of it. And he goes through a couple exercises that helps him with the balance and also mobility as well. The one exercise that we saw him do was where it was basically in a split and he would try to rock back and forth, move his pelvis, and do a bunch of exercises there. But for us, we tried it with the Bosu board. It didn't quite work, and so we moved on. The fifth B of Yamamoto's workout is bridge. Now, this is something that has become a lot more popular, right? Because there have been footage of Yamamoto doing bridges, people saying, bridges are what's gonna get you throwing harder. And so this is a little bit more common knowledge. But with the bridge, why does this help you increase pitching velocity? Well, think of your spine like a bamboo, right? Bamboo stick. Let's just say it's like this. And so the more we can bend it back, right? The more recoil there's gonna be. So the more range of motion we have this way in the pitching delivery here, and when we're here, the more we have to go forward, right? 80% of pitching velocity comes from the rotational aspects of throwing, but the other 20% is the linear aspect, right? So how much we can get this going. That's why he focuses on the bridge a lot. And his bridge workouts are crazy, and we gave them a try. Here's how it went. We were both pretty tight on this, so we don't have the best bridges, but we were messing around with a couple variations of the bridge, which was fun. So the first one is just a normal bridge where you're going up into a back bridge and seeing how much of a curve you can get, right? And obviously Yamamoto is 10 times, 100 times better than us. He's able to extend his arms and really get a crazy, crazy arc. But, we are getting there. And then And we were getting there. But the next one is a one-arm bridge. And this was more of a strength thing more than a mobility thing. And when I did it, it was extremely difficult. Now, what I started to realize after digging into Yamamoto and his workouts is that he is extremely strong and stable with his shoulders and upper body. Like, even with his handstand type stuff that we're going to dive into next, he was really, really strong. And if you try this with the one-arm back bridge, it is extremely difficult. And if you're able to do it, I mean, you might just be a beast and we're just weak. But this was a eye-opening moment for me because it made me realize how much more stability and strength I need in the upper body to be able to accomplish exercises like this. Now, the last one that we did was a clock bridge, where you're basically going around in a clock. Basically, you're going around clockwise and you rotate into a bridge. And I was able to do this, but getting out of it is extremely tough. But this is just one that's quite fun to be able to do. So if you're able to get that coordination and control of your body to be able to accomplish this, this is actually quite fun. So I would recommend this a lot. Now, before we dive into the extras of his judo workouts and also his javelin workouts, if you're someone who needs to increase pitching velocity, I actually created a full guide below that you can go and watch right now. But let's get right into the judo and javelin workouts. So firstly, Yamamoto doesn't lift any weights. And the reason he doesn't lift any type of weights is because in his book, he described it as this. If I gain, I want to be able to move my body extremely well. And muscles, especially big muscles, could get in the way of that. Now, his theory was that if you're building up muscles, right, and that's not actually converting into better, more efficient mechanics and allowing him to move better, then it's wasted. And there's truth to that, right? If you're just doing a bunch of bicep curls, and that's not going to help you throw harder, right? And so all of that added muscle and all of that training economy is basically going to waste if we're optimizing for pitching velocity. Now, he also goes on to say when you do weightlifting, you're only training one part of the body at a time, right? So for example, bench press, you're just training all of these muscles that are working for bench press. But in the pitching delivery, that's just not what happens. The pitching delivery works the whole body. And so he would rather train something that trains the whole body at once and learning how to fire the central nervous system, how to coordinate everything, really gain a good understanding of how to efficiently move his body, rather than just train each muscle in isolation. Now, us at the Pitch Lab, we do believe that there's a lot of benefit in weightlifting because it teaches the central nervous system to turn on the muscles, right? We don't think that, oh, just by benching a lot, you're gonna start throwing harder because you got stronger at the bench. No. The point of the weightlifting and why we use weightlifting is for you to gain better neuromuscular connections between your brain and your muscle to be able to turn them on, right? So then if you're better able to turn on each muscle, then in the pitching delivery, you'll be able to turn on each muscle, right? And your central nervous system will be better at firing those muscles when we're actually doing the thing that counts, which is throwing and pitching. And so that's why he doesn't lift weights, and he would rather do stuff like judo workouts. Now, what are judo workouts? Well, I collected a couple movements that I saw in his book, and we actually gave it a try. Now, going into our judo workouts, we started off with front rolls, and then we also did some backward rolls, which I don't know if I would recommend it as much for baseball players, because if you roll badly, it could really hurt your neck or something. And we've actually, that's why my training partner didn't do some of these, is because he previously hurt his shoulder doing one of these. So I would use these in moderation, right? But the front roll is something that I do most of my training days because I really like it. The barrel rolls are a pretty safe one. And the backwards rolls, I would, where you go over your shoulder, I would be careful of, but still, if you're able to accomplish those pretty safely, I think they're all good for, again, teaching your brain to be comfortable falling, right? And in situations where you're not completely in control. So the rolls are quite fun. It kind of brings you back to like being a child and just like playing around, because it's always good to remind ourselves that baseball and training isn't always that serious, right? Like if we can go back and have some fun in our training, then we're all for it. And we finished it off with some handstands. So the normal handstand is easy, right? We just go on top of a wall and we hold it, and that's not much of a challenge for us. But the challenge that came from it was when we did it one arm. Now this is a different beast. The amount of strength and body control you need to be able to accomplish this was crazy. Even with someone assisting me, this was extremely difficult to do. Now, Yamamoto is able to do this without any assistance. He is able to just get into a handstand and rock back and forth on each arm, which was absolutely crazy. This is extreme overhead strength. I don't know a single person who can do this. I don't know of many people who can do a one-arm handstand because either they're not strong enough or they don't have that type of body control. Okay, now what I was able to find of why Yamamoto does these judo workouts was to be able to control his body when it is in an off-balance position and when it is falling, right? So you might be thinking, oh, why are you doing like cartwheels and like backward rolls and stuff like that? How is that going to help you throw harder? Well, it's actually training your body to be comfortable in positions where you're falling. Now, where do you think that could translate? Where do you think a cartwheel could translate in the pitching delivery? Well, it can translate during the drift, right? The drift is where you're actively falling. You don't have control in that moment. You're letting go of control in that moment. And so a lot of the time what happens is your brain freaks out because you no longer have control of your body, right, during the drift. That's why people like to stay balanced. Balance point, because they want to be in control. But we know that to throw our hardest, we do need some type of drift, right? We need some type of linear momentum going toward the target. And so this can really help with the cartwheels and the rolls, is to be under control and be comfortable and tell your brain that it's okay to be in positions where you're falling or not fully in control. Okay, on top of that, this is working coordination, just general athleticism and coordination, which will only help us as pitchers. And lastly, the javelin training. So I'm not going to go too in depth with his javelin training because this has been covered widely, right? When you think of Yamamoto, you probably think about his javelin type workouts. But I will cover what was said in the book about why he started javelin training. What made him start javelin training was he was having a lot of elbow issues, right? He was really having a lot of pain in his elbow. And what he concluded was that he wanted to learn how to better use his body and throw with his body rather than just his arm. And so like he says in the book, he wanted to throw without bending his arm. And obviously this is a feel versus real thing, but what he was feeling when he was throwing with the javelin was literally not bending his arm. He would just throw it like this, okay? And the point of this was to better use his body to throw the javelin. Now, if you were to not bend your elbow, right? Where would all that power come from? Well, it'd have to come from the legs, it'd have to come from the spine, and all of this, right? You can't rely on the external rotation and your arm to throw the ball if you're gonna keep it straight. And so that was what his big focus was letting the body power the throw rather than the arm taking over. And he attributes a lot of his success to javelin training and why his elbows started to feel better. Because he learned the mechanics of really being able to use his body, which was helped by the 5 Bs, right? As he developed better awareness, coordination of his body, he was better able to use it in the throw that he trained with javelins. And so now he's way more efficient at moving his body, and then he's converting that, right, to the javelin. Now, I will say the javelin is at the very top, right? It's the cherry on top. Everyone thinks, oh, he just did javelins to throw hard. No, it was all of this stuff that was more important than the javelin. All of this stuff is showing up when he is throwing the javelin. He's developing all of these things, right? And all we see is the javelin throw. But these are the underlying reasons why he was able to make so much progress and throw so hard with such a small frame. Now, this is something that we didn't go too deeply on because we've experimented with it a lot. but basically just using your body to propel the arm forward, right? And the purpose of this is to throw the javelin straight. If you're slightly over supinated or you're pronated or you don't release it correctly, then the javelin just isn't going to go straight. And so we do like this training tool. It's kind of similar to a football, but it's more to teach the use of your body to throw rather than just relying on your arm. And so you might be thinking after watching this, well, all right, that was good, but what exactly should I be incorporating? And what's the central thing that I should take away from this video? Well, the thing that I took away from the book and from experimenting with a lot of this stuff, right, is that we need to develop better coordination and full body awareness. That is only going to help. Okay, and I wouldn't say, oh, go and do these exact exercises, because these things are the things that work for Yamamoto, right? But there are different ways of developing full body awareness, athleticism, coordination that'll help us as athletes, right? And so I would say, instead of just focusing on being strong and being powerful, right? Start to work on a little bit of these intricate details, especially if you're at a high level. Like learning how to relax is so important. Learning how to control your body and having better full body awareness. Like if you're able to drift a little bit better by incorporating a couple judo workouts, that could be 3 miles an hour instantly. And so if you're a high level guy, I would experiment with some of these things and see if it actually translates to your pitching delivery. Because even if one of these translate, right, you get a little bit more range of motion in your spinal extension, or you gain a little bit more balance, right, and you're better in the leg lift. You gain better. You're better in uncomfortable situations when your body is falling, which helps you in the drift. All of these could literally be an instant 3 to 5 miles an hour. Right? But the central thing that I got out of it was to start looking at stuff that isn't the norm. It's not all about throwing hard and lifting weights, right? There are things that as you get to the higher levels, you can start to think about to continue to make progress. Now again, if you're someone who needs to gain pitching velocity, I created a full video on this, so first link in the description, you can go watch that. But I'll see you soon.